welcome once again to the Dwarven Tavern. I am Lyric, and I'm going to be bringing you a review. Now, this game it's an RPG game, and it's been waiting on our shelf since Gen Con 2015, so that's kind of a long time, but this game is so complex, it is so detailed, and just, there's so much to it that it deserved to have someone's undivided attention for at least 3 or 4 days, just to understand the whole complexity of it. And here at the Dwarven Tavern, we're all very busy, so it was kind of hard to manage that time. But I finally managed to do it, and I finally am going to bring to you this game that's been patiently waiting for its own review, and that game is the Clockwork Dominion. Now, this game is set in Victorian Era, specifically 1896, and it is using all of the Victorian style of mannerisms and technology and beliefs and all of that sort. But, as I will mention later on, it takes it a step further. But let me begin by explaining this game, the premise behind it. So, just bear with me for a moment. In the beginning, there was nothing. Except that there was something. It was this chaotic void. It was the nothingness, the ether, or however you want to pronounce it. Just chaos reigned supreme in the darkness of nothingness. And then the clockmaker steps in and he bends the Pontus, or otherwise known as the nothingness, the void. He bends the Pontus to his will and creates everything. The light, the dark, the world that we live in, the universe that surrounds us, and he creates all of this fabric, this clockwork, all of the cogs and the pieces of this ginormous clockwork, and he creates humans and animals and the water and the air we breathe and the land we live on. He creates it all, and then he decides that he wants to step back and just watch his creation tick away. Well, since the creator, or the clockmaster, has created humans, he's created us all as pieces of this ginormous clock. Metaphorical clock. So we all have roles to play, and duties to fulfill, and a life to uphold. And as pieces of the clock, we have to tick correctly, or otherwise the clock will break apart. And that is what's happening. Ever since the fall of mankind, the Pontus has slipped into the cracks we have created in our inability to fulfill the clockmaker's roles that he has given us on his divine will, I should say. And the Pontus is seeping in and corrupting the reality around us. That's where this game comes into play. We are in a world where the clockwork is slowly falling apart, and we as human beings have to figure out why. Why is the Pontus coming into effect? Is the Pontus even real? Is it a fanciful superstition that people have created to explain the supernatural occurrences that have nothing to do with the clockwork? There are people who think that the clockwork, it has nothing to do with divinity. It's all about the world that Great Britain, the Great British Empire, has created in 1896. So, you are set in this game trying to figure out the answers of all the different questions around you, such as, is the Pontus real? How can I defeat it? How can I help to create the fabrics of the clockwork stay together as the clockmaker originally intended? So, this game, just to set it up for you, has the clockmaker and the clockwork, which can be either Earth, or if you're a very educated person, it could be the universe, as much as we have explored in 1896. And this world is very steampunk, and despite steampunk being kind of a fanciful, mechanical work that doesn't really make sense, like, it's like oh, I wish that had happened in 1896. But in this book, this wonderful book, they have done their research and have found real-life instances of when the steampunk type inventions, technology, actually was created. So, for example, in Victorian era, in the Great British Empire, there are people who have created inventions that, if had been accepted by their peers, would have been revered as, dynamically changing the society that they lived in, to create a very steampunky style of living. For example, in 1845, I'm reading directly from the book, Joseph Faber, I don't know. I wish people had pronunciation guides to their names, but this is a real life person, so I don't know. I'm just going to say Faber. So, in 1845, Joseph Faber exhibited his wonderful talking head, a stationary automaton capable of fully synthetic speech. Another one, in 1893, George Moore, so much easier with the name, invented a steam-powered automaton in the shape of a man that could stand upright and run at speeds in excess of 5 miles per hour. Now, the book is taking all of these real-life inventions that actually happened and saying, what if they had been accepted by the peers? What if these scientists had been revered instead of shunned, and put all of their works together to create real-life automata and created the steampunk revolution and used the divine power of their religions to praise these works instead of ignoring or outright blasphemizing these things, these creations. And it says in here that it kind of fast-forwarded the movements that we've experienced already in our timeline and just created a one step further from our reality into another. So, it's basically saying that these steampunk inventions aren't that far-fetched. I thought that was very cool. So this game is not only extremely intriguing, but it's also very educational. Because it is coming directly from the education. Look at the artwork too, just so beautiful. These artists just know what they're doing. But as I was saying, all this education is coming directly from the research of Great Britain in the 1880s or 1890s. So the beliefs of the 1800s, late 1800s, I should say, and the conquered land, the colonies of Great Britain's empire in the 1880s, 1890s, all go into play in this book. For example, you can have your character set in Ireland or Scotland or, if I can flip faster, the Imperial Reach. It has Australia and Canada and all these other places, and of course the foreign powers and remote imperial cities. The places that have not been influenced by the Great Britain Empire, such as Scandinavia or South America or Spain even. You can have your character placed anywhere in the world and they will be affected by the clockwork of Great Britain. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying the Great Britain Empire or British Empire, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting it wrong somehow, so please excuse my ignorance. I'm very excited about this game. So moving on to the next chapter, which is chapter 3, we've got the cosmology, which on this page, right here actually, it explains in depth what the clockwork is. For example, when mortals speak, I'm reading from the book again, when mortals speak of the clockwork, many are simply referring to the clockwork in which they live, the Earth. Citizens of the Empire frequently use the term even more exclusively to speak solely of those countries under the Queen's rule. So the Great Clockwork, or rather, the Clockwork, specifically under the Queen's rule, would be the Great British Empire, or the British Empire. You know what, if I'm saying it wrong, just use my great as an adjective and not part of the title. That'll fix my problem of mispronunciation. However, again, from the book, however, the true boundaries of the clockwork extend much further than the ends of our empire, or even our planet. What was created in the beginning was not simply this clockwork world, very hard to say together, but rather the majestic collection of interconnected realms, each turning like cogs in the clockmaker's grand design. So it's not just limited to our Earth, it's not just limited to our galaxy or our universe, but parallel universe as well, and different realms such as the celestial realm or the abyssal realm. So you can get really in depth with the monsters and the creatures that can seep through the Pontus and have, not corrections, but have connections with your players and with your characters. Which is also very, very cool. So even though this clockwork was created by the clockmaker, it was created by using the Pontus, or as I mentioned before, the chaotic void. So the cogs and the gears of the clockwork were made from the Pontus. This chaos was formed into our ordered universe, but has not remained such. And it goes further on to describe that we don't know if it's because of human action, of what we're doing to the world around us, that is creating this decay, or if it's a natural decay, if the clockwork was never made to be forever, it's set in stone, or if it was just a temporary project or experiment that the clockmaker himself was performing. And there is no answer in the book. There is no answer in this game. We have to figure it out as the players. And that is the overall question of the game is, why is the Pontus seeping into our world? Is it our fault? Was it just in the natural order of things? Are we a result of the Pontus seeping in? Like, what has humanity affected the clockwork into becoming, or did we even are we even part of the effect? Are we a part of the question or the solution? And that's a lot of the cosmology part of this book, with the religions and the individual beings. And then, of course, it also has the intended realms, which are different parts of the clockwork, such as the heavens, or the outer darkness, which they all have like sub-realms also, like the refuse, which is Maon. Again, pronunciation guides if you could. I would be so appreciative. Please, for the love of God, if you're creating books, this is my stickler with everything. It's not just, I'm not just ranting on this book, but Lyric's #1 rule: if you are creating a game that has unusual words in it, please, at the back of your book, put a pronunciation guide so that ignorant boobs, like Lyric, pronounce it correctly. Because I've pronounced names like Stephen and John incorrectly because they were spelled differently, and therefore I was the ignorant one, even though there was no pronunciation guide in the book. So, if you could, pronunciation guides in the back of the book. Not this book's fault. This book is actually really extremely cool, but I would certainly like it if I knew I was pronouncing these things correctly. So, Lyric tip #1. So then there's also the unintended realms. This is where the Pontus came in and corrupted the worlds around us. Not our world necessarily, but rather multiple universes laying on top of each other that the Pontus is kind of mashing together to create these overlapping universes that have Pontus manifestations, which I won't get into, but it's also a very cool book, like a cool part of the book. For example, a corruption is that these fish are just in a field, just swimming about, even though that wouldn't necessarily make sense with our world's physics. So, it's very complex. It's a very complex universe, and I like that about it. And then, of course, you have the animals that are corrupted and are creating different monsters, and then there are celestial beings that can come into our realm, such as the Grigori, which are angel protectors that decided to live among human mortals, and then the Nephilim, the people who are the Grigori's spawn. They are their ancestors are the Grigori. So they're not necessarily angels, but they have angelic history. They have angelic ancestry. Genetics, if you would. And of course the Fae, which is one of my favorite parts of this entire thing, because I'm all about the fantasy, is that the Victorians believed. In the Victorian era, there were fairies. People believed in fairies. There was photographed fairies. Whether those pictures were augmented or real is still up for debate even in our real world, but in this world they are real because the Pontus is seeping in and mashing all those universes together and creating things that would not normally exist in our world, and those things are the Fae. And there are things like changelings and wildlings and creatures that are not human. They're not pure-blood mortals, which is another part of this book. If you are from originally Earth and you have no corruption in your blood, then you are pure-blood mortal. And it said about 98 and 100 people are pure-blood, and then the other 3 corrupted blood types are changelings, I think. I have to, let me look in here real quick. So, now that I've cleared that up with myself, the corruption in the blood, as it states on page 12 of the book, I was flipped too far, there are 3 different types of corrupted blood, and those types are changelings. They're not necessarily Fae, they carry the blood of Fae. They are otherworldly creatures who do not belong in our clockwork. Then there are the Nephilim. That pronunciation guide is, sounding real good right now. Who are the Grigori offspring. They carry the blood of the Grigori. They are the angels that abandoned the service of the clockwork, who wanted to live alongside mortals, and thus produce offspring of the mortals. Thus, the Nephilim. And then there are beast folk, who are unfortunate souls. They are poor, unfortunate souls. So they are creatures that were originally pure-blooded, except they were part of the science revolution of this era and turned into creatures that are neither human nor beast, and they're called the beast folk for that very reason. And these are the people that have, say, dog snouts instead of a nose and a mouth, or they've got the ears of a cat, or they're scientifically altered to be specifically different for the sake of experimentation and science. So they are creatures man-made to be these things for the purpose of science. And those 3 people exist in the 2% of the 98 otherwise pure-blooded people. So, moving on to the next chapter, which is the rule systems. Again, look at that gorgeous artwork. I'm in love with this artwork. It is so polished and just gloriously painted. And of course, I just love the thick lines and all that stuff. It's just, it's classy. So, this describes that there is no DM or no GM. This is actually the narrator. So there is a narrator to the story instead of a dungeon master, which a very cool touch. And it lays out all of the game mechanics for you. For example, the card mechanic, which I'll put up so that you can see it better. It's got the different parts to it, like the number at the top, which is the used for tiebreakers, the condition name, the condition text, and the card value, which this game system, if I haven't mentioned it already, is a card RPG rather than a D20 or a D10 system, which is very cool in my opinion. But at the same time, you have to buy, alongside with this book, a deck of cards. It is a communal deck. You don't have to buy decks for every person or every player every time you add a person. It's a communal deck, which means that everyone gets their cards from the same deck. And again, very cool. So it's a very condensed, concise system. And the cards are used for things like skill checks, for personality checks. If you are part of the high society and you're trying to convince someone to like you, that's what you use the cards for. Every interaction, the cards can play a decent role in that. And then, of course, it also has the different tables for the different parts of the game, like the narrating degrees of success, which if you have a +8, it's extraordinary success. And the cards all have different numbers on them. There's like -2s to negative blah blah blah. There's all types of cards. And that's where I will get to the Doom and the Fate card. The Doom card is a card that takes your situation and uses the corruption in your soul, in your heart. And if you're a corrupted person, it latches on to the evil of that, which I won't even say evil, but the malice of that particular instance, of that person, and creates the utmost horrendous situation. When you draw the Doom card, you're basically doomed to fail, and that is what the Doom card is. And then, on the opposite side of that, there is the Fate card, where you are graced by the Clockmaker's divine glory and will, and he wants you to succeed, so you are fated to succeed. It's basically a fumble and a critical, but with cards. And I thought that was very cool, that they had cards made specifically for those instances. But at the same time, the chance of getting those cards all depends on how many people play, how well you shuffle the deck, and how often you use the cards, which it really doesn't change that much, because this game can be very heavily story-based, but also very heavily action-based, and you will use the cards at the same rate that you would your dice, almost more so. If you think about it, because normally you would only use dice for skill checks and for actions and for hits and stuff. But for this, you can also use your cards for if you want to be convincing, and they actually have a thing called disposition, which if you are trying to interact with higher society, then you are at a certain disposition, and you have to have the cards help you out with that as well. So that's very cool. And of course, in this section, they also have the different ways that you can use your dice, your cards, and it can show the different attacks and the different ways that these cards will come into play. Also very cool. But this artwork! Oh, it's so gorgeous! This game is also very, I mean, like I said, it's set in Victorian era, so its social influences are extremely important. They're very highly revered if you are upper class. So they also have social attacks, which can be like if you have mudslinging to do, or if you've got dirt on someone, then you could totally just destroy this person's reputation, which is also very important in this game, and just mutilate that person and climb the ranks of high society yourself. So it does have the different tables, which show you not only what the cards do, but also how you can play the cards. And of course there's intrigue. So intrigue is very much like social attacks, except this one takes it a bit higher, a bit more so. It's they're in more complicated social conflicts, rather than you just want to slight somebody by starting a rumor. This is like you found some dirt on the governor's daughter that she's sleeping around and being a hoe, and you can totally destroy that, or you can blackmail her and totally make her your wife and climb the ranks yourself, and you won't even care, because you don't care that she's hoeing around. You just want that title. So this is more based on reputation than it is based on the ranking of society. So moving on to character creation, they actually have a 10-step character creation, and it's all listed out in the character creation chapter, which is chapter 5. They have a sideways, also a very cool thing about it. They have got a sideways character sheet that is also available in the back of the book, right here. Oops, there we go, right there. Very cool. So you can make as many character sheets as you want, and it all starts with the bloodline. What bloodline are you? Are you a pure blood, which means that you are you are created by the clockmaker to be a cog in his system? Or are you beast folk, which means that you were experimented on and cast aside by society and created? And which I should mention that the corrupted people live side by side with the pure-blooded people. And depending on what part of society, you will be taken care of or shunned or even killed for being a corrupted person. For example, if you're a beast folk, let's say you're kind of a minotaur type character, you would be more accepted in the fields for, doing cow work than you would be in high society where you couldn't fit into a dress. Which, those are kind of trivial things to be based off of, but like, for example, if you are more of a wolfish character, you might be more accepted into the high society and burned at the stake or chased or hunted while you're in the farmlands. So it really would depend on what type of character you are and how you wanted to play to create this high society character or this low society character even. And all of it can affect your character and where your character will be. Like all of the different points of the character creating process, can shape your character even before you play them. So for example, you could be a changeling, and you have changeling lineages, which can be tricksters, brutes, or fair folk, and you have abilities based off of your fey lineage. Then the Nephilim, which are descendants of Grigori, and you have the different types of Nephilim lineages, like the Anakim, the Enim, or Anim, or Moabim. So those are the different types of Fae, or rather the different types of Nephilim, and that's part one. And it's a whole 10-step process. So part 2 is the pursuits, what your character's ambitions are. For example, are you a discoverer? Are you an alchemist? Or is ambition what drives you? Are you a pirate? It has the on this table, it says whatever you pursue in, which is ambition, discovery, dominion, faith, or industry, or freedom. And then it also gives you profession examples, which are mercenary, academic, constable, priest, industrialist, activist, pirate, socialite, blah, blah, blah. So whatever you want to do, if you have a specific job in mind, it'll also give you what pursuit, what potential, and what aptitude bonuses you have, which all come into play later in the different sections. And it has all of the description for the different pursuits. And then step 3 is backgrounds, which are you a criminal? Are you part of the clergy? Are you a peer or a politician or a professional? Or, do you know what you're doing? Or do you thieve for food? Step 4 is aptitudes. Are you graceful? Do you have a lot of vigor? Do you have a lot of reason? Can you not focus? Stuff like that. Step 5 is skills, which we all know and love. But these are, all the skill points and stuff are very low numbers. They all have, you could have a +2 or a +3 in, if you are this or that. For example, the skill values, 1 is competent, 2 is proficient, 3 is adept, 4 is expert, and 5 is master. So there are only 5 rankings in these skills. The higher you are ranked from 1 to 5, you will have more skills. You will have higher ranking than if you had lower ones. For example, if I was a rank 3 linguist, I would be an adept, which means I am a sophisticated grasp, which actually kind of does fit me. I'm kind of am an adept linguist because I do have a grasp, and I am no master, and I'm certainly not an expert. So but at the same time, I am more than just proficient. I can not only get by, but I can also make it with using my language skills. So, And of course, they do have the languages, which is the first thing that came to my mind. And then the skill languages, and all of the descriptions of the skills, which is nice. Assets and liabilities are character creation step 6. So the assets are special benefits, reading from the book, that the character enjoys, or rather special benefits that the character enjoys, and cover everything from transcendent powers to special access and allies and helpful accoutrements. Words. Liabilities are hindrances burdening a character and often the consequence of ill luck or indiscretion. So there are things outside their powers that either benefit them or hinder them. God, I just can't English today. And in the this particular part, they've got the organizations, which is the British Army and constabularies, the Royal Society, which is all of the ups and higher people, so on and so forth. And then liabilities can be things as you're faint-hearted or gullible, or you have an obsession, or a nemesis. And these can add more of a rounded part to your character, which again is pretty cool. And then step 7 is affinities. You have affinities such as motivating goals, loyalties, and affections that drive the character's decisions. Such as you have a mother at home who's always sick, so you're using that as an affinity to progress your character's storyline. Or it actually has the rankings, which are fondness, love, passion, devotion, and martyrdom. So, for example, you would die for your beliefs if you are a rank 5 for something specifically. And then reputations is character creation steps 8. Numbers 2. I'm just falling apart because the Pontus is seeping into my soul and chaos is taking over. So this is all about reputations, as you can see. And reputations in the Victorian era were very, very important. If you didn't have a reputation, if you didn't have a reputation to go off of, then your character was no one. You were nothing, and you were not important to the society around you. So reputation is very important. Are you a nobody, or are you well known and loved and respected, and people are coming after you to kill you for your scientific work? What is your reputation? Step 9 is wealth and accoutrements, which go off of what part of society you are part of. For example, if you are part of high society, you automatically have high wealth. More often than not. Like, you could be one of the wealthiest people, you could be one of the highest people in society and you're secretly broke. And that can be your storyline, your character's background. And then the finishing touches, which are things like physical defense, guard, social defense, esteem, morale, and potential. And, of course, your description and personality. And you have created your character! So, and actually, if you're, couldn't follow along with any of that, in the book, it actually has a character creation walkthrough. And for when you play this game a lot, it has character advancement, which, as described in this book, you don't level up. You don't go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. You actually level up your skills individually, and all the experience points are so minuscule that you level up almost at the same rate as your characters in a different game would, just extremely differently. For example, increasing an aptitude cost 5 experience points per new rank. If you wanted a new aptitude, you would need 5 experience points to spend on those aptitudes. If you want to gain a liability, you have to gain 5 experience points, which you must consult with the narrator. If you are partially fluent in a language, you must gain 2 points. So the more fluent you are in a language, the more 2 points you need, which is very cool. So, and that, how to give experience points, is directed in the narrative section, which is later on in this book. So it gives you a character creation walkthrough, which is pretty cool. It's about this character, Abigail St. George, which is she. She is an NPC that you can throw into your game. Then there's Ivy Star, Panth, and Silas-Toyne. All characters of the different corruption levels and the different ranks in society and whatnot. So you can use those NPCs in your game, or actually you can even use those for pre-rolled up characters. Then we've got accoutrements and technology, which finally moves us to the steampunk part of the game. As mentioned before, it doesn't really stray far from the mechanics of the Victorian era technology. It just is more accepting. It's a more open-minded society where all the scientific advancements, all of the technological advancements are embraced rather than ignored. And it has a complexity table, a structure table, and like it has a bunch of tables for the narrators to decide how long it'll take you to create this certain thing, or how much effort it'll take you to, you know, perform certain actions. And it has tables for, say, medical services, if you need, like, dental work done, or if you have heart problems and need surgery. So it's very involved, and I like that very much. It also has a huge travel table, so that's pretty cool. And security, survival gear, basically what you need to gear up your characters with, firearms, blah, blah, blah. And then it even has a section for if you want to create something. If the type of gun that you want isn't in-game, but you know that it comes on like in 1900s, then there's also the item creation, and if the different functions of the games, like, for example, what's the capacity of this, and if it's a communicator, is it explosive? You know, they're very important parts of if you're creating something. Then, of course, it has restrictions, which, is it very dangerous to use? Do you need a giant number of people to work it? How long does it take to set up? Like, all of those things are included in this section, which is restrictions. And then the next part is transcendent powers. If you are Fae or Nephilim, or you are an alchemist, then you have, this is part of your section. It's kind of like if you are working on something and you have these specific abilities. For example, if you're a Fae, then you probably have glamour, which, you know, allows you to befriend people more easily or charm people more easily, which is actually a huge Fae thing. They like to charm the unknowing. Excuse me. And you can weaken purpose. It's all like, you all have very specific abilities as these individual races that can come into play with your character later. Then they've got magic! Because what is a game without magic, of course? They have the right composition, which is the practice of ritual magic and how it plays out in the game. And words of power, which is part of the Nephilim kind of magic. So I would look into that if you're very curious about the magic. It is very laid out. The whole book is very laid out. Everything has a description. You just need to find it in the right place of the book, which I have a very hard time doing because it is so in-depth. So now we move on to the narrative chapter, which is narrating the game. This is specifically the narrator's section, the Dungeon Master section. It tells all about writing and telling the stories and the locations and the names of the characters to use, what you should do for characters of agents of chaos, and then it has even the example of storylines, which is pretty cool. And sample storylines as well, plot points if you're at a loss for what to do. Example, the circumstances aligned to offer the party an opportunity to steal the USS Eagle. Once they control the Zeppelin, they will need to secure contacts who can provide fuel and ammunition. This requires them to deal with the war profiteers who may have their own designs for the Eagle, or will be willing to sell them out. So, like, it gives examples of what you can do for your characters to make the story not only more interesting, but also fall in the lines with the gameplay and the setting of the time of the Victorian era. Then it also has what to do for portraying narrated characters, which are minor characters, which are allies, antagonists, the like, narrating a conflict, which it gives you a sample of conflict, like physical conflict, like if you're in a brawl, or social conflict, if you are butting head to head with say a duke, and what to do if corruption is involved, which is a very important part of this game, and the Pontus itself, which creates the cracks in creation, the cracks in the clockwork, and tables and glorious examples which can lead you onward into your game. Then there are rewards, such as experience points. Just to explain it directly from the book, the experience points are the most common reward in the game. The players will use the experience points to level up their characters' abilities and skills, thus the rate of which they are given out is up to the narrator, depending on how high or how fast they want to level up their individual abilities and skills. Then there are things such as wealth and knowledge, allies, which can be another advantage, another reward to give your character, opportunity, that can sometimes just fall in the lap of the character, or there can even be increased character threat, which means that your character has stumbled into a world of chaos that they now need to find their way out of. And lastly, the allies and antagonists, and this is the anatomy of the narrator character, which are basically NPCs. And, I lied. The narrator characters, this is the anatomy of a narrator character, which is basically the PC. So, you have conflict assessment, unusual skill, just, the tidbits that are left to explain in the game, the technicalities of the games that depend on the tiny little details, such as armor, or aptitude bonuses, and extra maneuvers, and stuff like that. So, that is the end of this particular game. Oh wait, I forgot to mention, they also have a section for animals and other creatures, like automata, and celestial beings, and chimera, and fae. So basically, this back end of the book is your monster manual, if you will, and it's got a bunch of different creatures for that. But that's basically the entire book. This is a very in-depth, fast-paced, story-oriented game, except it can be the exact opposite of that. It can be slow, it can be fast, it can be story-oriented, it can be story-oriented, is what I just said. God, I am so tongue-tied for this book. It can be story-oriented, it can be action-based, it can be whatever you want it to be. This book has so much opportunities for the characters playing it to be whatever book that it wants to be whatever game that you want it to be. It can be a fantasy game, it can be a high society game, it can be an action game, it can even be a dungeon crawl. There are catacombs all over Europe that your characters want to explore. This game, the only complication to it is that it seems to have a different system, which is that it uses cards instead of dice, which kind of actually makes the game go even faster. The whole turn system, the round-robin system that normal D20 systems normally have, like you have to wait your turn because you didn't roll high enough initiative, this game completely avoids that by having cards in play. For example, initiative is someone flips a card, another person flips a card, a bullet's involved, you want to block the bullet from hitting your paramour, so you flip 2 cards and now your initiative is first. So it really just depends on how diverse you want to play this game, and I think that is extremely rare for any game to be that successful in portraying it. This game is extremely in-depth, it's involved, and it's well thought out. There's so much research put into this game, and I love that about it. So, that is that review. I'm going to give this game, I have no reason to not give it a 5 out of 5, because it is so complex, so researched, and yet it has all this opportunity for being the most fanciful game you've ever played. It's got a different system, which, as a matter of fact, if you don't want to go out and buy the book, if you're very curious about it, but you want to give it a taste test, you can actually go to their website, which is reliquarygamestudios.com. They have a link to it, but you can also go to drivethroughrpg.com and search for the Clockwork Dominion and find a preset game. They've actually got a quick start rule set that you can totally get that's basically the outline of the book, and they've got 6 pre-made characters, and they've got a story scenario all lined up for you, and they actually have artless cards to go with it, so you don't even need to buy any part of this game to enjoy it. However, since it's such a high-rated book by the Dwarven Tavern, I would highly recommend that you go out and buy this along with the cards, because it is such a good RPG series. It's all here, all of the Dungeon Master stuff, which is actually the narrator stuff if you've been paying attention. All of the narrator stuff, all of the monsters, all of the different creatures and the types of characters that you can play, it's all in here. The only extra thing that you need is the deck of cards, which are phenomenally beautiful. So please check them out on their website, which again is reliquarygamestudios.com. Buy their stuff, look into them. I'm pretty sure they've got other games and expansions for this game coming out soon. And I have been Lyric Owens from the Dwarven Tavern. Please check us out at www.dwarventavern.net. Be sure to make sure that it's .net, because .com will take you somewhere else. It's not us. And of course, on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, I am Lyric. This is the Clockwork Dominion. 5 out of 5, check them out. And we wish for you to want for nothing but adventure, and at first I feared it, then I charged. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.